Antibiotic resistance is when germs, things like bacteria, become resistant to the drugs that we use to combat them, the drugs that we use to kill them. And it happens in a number of different ways. And when antibiotics become resistant, it's a problem for us because it affects our ability to be able to treat diseases and to be able to carry out things like surgery, which we quite often need to give antibiotics for. Um, it's a global problem. It's not just an issue for us here in the UK. We know that there are about 500,000 people who have tuberculosis in the world that is resistant to multiple different types of drugs. So it's a real global health crisis. And it comes about for a variety of reasons. It's not just humans that we use antibiotics in. We also use them in farming, both for crops and for animals. And so when there are lots of antibiotics in the environment, those bacteria learn how to evolve and learn how to change themselves so that they become resistant to those antibiotics and so that the antibiotics are not as effective at killing them. So the more we use them, the more they develop this kind of resistance. And so it's really important that we all do our bit and only use the antibiotic when we really have to and when they're really needed. A question we often get asked is how important is it that we finish the course of antibiotics that were prescribed? And it's really important, and that's for a couple of reasons. Firstly, if you don't take the full course of the antibiotics, there's a possibility that the bacteria doesn't get completely killed off in your body, in your system. And so there's a risk then that the bacteria and the infection can come back and affect you again, and perhaps worse the second time round. The other reason it's really important to finish the course is because if that bacteria still hangs around in your system, then it's able to then learn how to resist and how to fight back against the drugs that we use to kill it. So if we don't manage to kill it off properly, we're perhaps making the situation of bacterial resistance even worse. So we often get asked questions about is it okay to drink alcohol while we're taking antibiotics? And there's a bit of an urban myth that you can't drink alcohol at all when you're taking any antibiotics, and that's not actually true. There are a couple of very specific antibiotics which will have a very nasty reaction with alcohol. The most common one of these is called metronidazole. It's quite often used for dental infections. And if you drink alcohol while you're taking it, there will be a very specific reaction between the two of them, and that can be very unpleasant. With the vast majority of antibiotics, though, there's no absolute reason not to drink sensibly and in moderation. What we would say is that if you're drinking a lot, that can change the makeup of the bacteria inside your stomach, inside your gut, and that can affect how effective the antibiotics can be. So if you drink a lot while you're on antibiotics, you're potentially making them a bit less effective. But the other reason that we would generally advise people not to drink any more than small amounts of alcohol when they're taking antibiotics is because usually when you're taking them, you have an infection and you probably don't feel very well anyway. And so the alcohol is going to make you feel worse rather than it necessarily having any significant impact on the antibiotics themselves.